Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our midweek little bit of Hebrew as we continue in the book of Daniel, moving on to chapter 10. And if you remember, Daniel had received a vision encounter with angelic being. And of course, this really shook him, moved him. We're going to read a little bit more about that. Additional emotions that Daniel felt about this encounter. And that's one of the things I believe that as we go through life, we have those God moments, times when we encounter a presence, most often something we can't understand. And maybe to other people, it may seem totally unrealistic. It may seem very unimportant to other people, but at the time, these are what I call God moments, God winks, some people call them, when God will just impress upon you that He sees you, He knows what you're going through, and that He loves you and cares for you. And so I just love that thought um, as we serve a very personal and intimate God who definitely knows where we're at today and what we're going through. So as we pick this thought up and go into chapter 10, we're just going to be looking at the first verse, and it has some very interesting things on. We're reading from the Jewish Publication Society, JPS version, Sasino Press. And it says here in chapter 10, verse 1, in the third year of Cyrus, the king of Persia, a word was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. Interesting, this is written in the third person. This is different than if you would think that Daniel's writing it and said these things in the first person. And so that's an interesting thought. And then it goes on, and this word was true, even a great warfare. So that's an interesting word I underlined. And he gave heed to the word and had an understanding of the vision. Of course, that's what Daniel was looking for was, you know, okay, I have this encounter, I have this vision, whatever it is. What am I supposed to gain from this? What am I supposed to learn? What should I tell others? What should I apply to myself? And so those are all very valid questions, and we'll take a look at a few of these words. But something else I want to pass along with you as I progress in my Hebrew reading and understanding and learning the Hebrew language. Um, I learned that there is, this beautiful language, there is a musical notation called cantillation, and that in the synagogues, Jewish people will chant um, the entire, all these Hebrew verses. And in fact, it's one of the things that aids in their, first of all, memorization, having the musicality to it, but also in their ability to relate to it. And so it was something that always intrigued me in Christianity. We do not hear much about any type of chanting, at least not in the Protestant form of religion. It's just not something that's a part of those religious systems. But yet, we know it exists in other religions, and maybe that's why in Christianity we somewhat uh, feel not aligned with it, put it that way. It's different for us, and we haven't accepted it. But in the Jewish culture, Hebrew reading, it is very much embraced. And we see references to it in the New Testament of meditating, of, hiding God's word in your heart, singing a song, and realizing they didn't have, top 40 radio back then or Christian artists pumping out records. What they did was they sung and chanted the scriptures. In fact, even reference to the time of the Last Supper, it says that they sang a psalm. And all of the Hebrew Bible has a melody to it. And so I've kind of set myself to learning it. I want to share a little bit of that with you in case you're interested in hearing it. There are websites out there that will do a much better job. But the musicality of it is not a standardized process. It is somewhat um, allowed to be tailored to the individual, their ability to sing or not sing. and their ability to maintain this musicality. There's no standard. There is for the reading and pronunciation of the Hebrew words, but as far as the musicality, as long as you keep something similar and keep it flowing, it's accepted. But I found that as I do this, I feel more in tune with the words that I'm reading. It tends to stay with me. I tend to find myself replaying it in my mind, and finding that, maybe there's something we haven't learned before that may help us internalize and process the scriptures. So I'm going to give it a try. Sure, I'll make some mistakes. I'll get better as time goes on, but just wanted to make you aware of it because I never knew it existed before. So as we read this first verse in the Hebrew, now we're looking at these little marks above and below these Hebrew words. And so as we start out, it'd be Bishnat Shalosh Lekoresh Melech Paras Devar Nigla LeDaniel. That's the name of Daniel. LeDaniel Asher Nikra Shemo Belteshazzar Ve'emet Hadavar Betzava Gadol Uvin et Hadavar Uvina Lo Bamar E. So that's a very rough, missed a few notes there, but you get the idea of the chanting of it, and it can be made a little more flowery if a person has a wonderful melodic voice, and enhance those sounds a little bit more. And it's not meant to go through real fast. It's meant to allow you to think. And some of the words will have notes on them that allow a deeper understanding. If you see and hear kind of a complicated sound on those words, it's meant to draw your attention to it and make you meditate and think upon that word. And so, again, just very, very fascinating. So I hope you enjoyed that little bit of deeper Hebrew knowledge. So from that point, we're going to look down and take a look at what the sages have to say about this part we're reading. Recaps here about Daniel falling into a trance, meeting the archangel Michael or Michael in Hebrew. Talked about the third year of Cyrus. And again, when you see things in the Bible, sometimes we skip over these dates and times and references, but there was a reason for this. Why is Daniel trying to make us aware of this time and talking about Cyrus and the kings that are in control right now? So making reference to this time period. And then this word that we want to look at, the great warfare, translated as that in this Hebrew Bible, but the word the sages are saying relates to a time of intense hardship, and it's for a determined period. So we're going to leave that part of it, and let's take a look at another Jewish source and see how they translate that word warfare. And so here we have the translation. The Hebrew is obviously the same, but the King Cyrus of Persia, an oracle. Interesting that they use the word devar, which is a word meaning words from the heart, or words that have very personal, important meaning. Translating this as an oracle was revealed to Daniel, gave his name of Belteshazzar. The oracle was true, but here this word of warfare is translated at great task to understand the prophecy, and understanding came through a vision. So another very interesting time. We'll take a look at Bible Hub, and here we can unpack the words a little bit more as we go just a little deeper into this. And it translates this word warfare as to the appointed time. So let's this strange word, what is could be warfare, what is appointed time, what is talked about as a great task. Let's see what this word is. It's pronounced sava. It's a sade Beit and Aleph, and you may hear the words of the Lord of the Sabbath. If you, in the English version, if you come across the reference of the Lord of Hosts, Lord of the Sabbath, it comes from this word, which is pronounced Sabah, and it is transliterated here as Tsaba, pronounced Sabah, and it is the commonly used word um, in Hebrew for an army. But again, in Hebrew, which is a very word deficient language, there's about 7,500 words in the biblical Hebrew. They have many different meanings, and so it's up to the context. And the heart of the translator is he's moved by God's Spirit as it relates to him, how he should translate them. So here you see their host in the King James, again, references back to this word, Savah. Here is army. Army and host seem to be one of the favorite translations from that. Um, but how does this fit in? What are we talking about here? And what is Daniel trying to um, tell us? Here you can see the five different ways of translating it is a mass of persons, a mass of things, a regularly organized group of people, which is where the word army, and of course, why do you assemble an army? Because you're going for war. It can also mean a time of hardship and even worship. Again, very interesting, the many different uses of this word. So let's go down a little bit into the Brown Driver Briggs, which gives us a little deeper understanding. What I find interesting is that Hebrew words have a gender assigned to them. They all words are either masculine or feminine, but here you see a word for a mass of people, something tied to army, war, warfare, having a feminine ending on it. You would think it would be a masculine ending. But the Hebrew has a number of things like that. And so that's another one of those things you stop and think, why would the word for war or troublesome times have a feminine ending on? And I don't have an answer for you, but there are also words, other words that sometimes surprise you with endings that you wouldn't expect to be in a masculine or a feminine state. Even the word for father, which is Abba, has a feminine ending on. And sometimes I wonder if it's just to draw your attention to aside from the obvious, but to look for a deeper meaning. In a war, there's tragedy that occurs. There are people lose their lives. Families are torn apart. Cities are destroyed. Utter construction. I can't think of a time when you would want a compassionate presence, which is mostly many times associated with a feminine, um, compassionate passionate personality to come into play. So, in the midst of this tragedy and hardship, here's a little clue to say mercy needs to come about, compassion needs to come about. Um, that's just my take on it, but it's very interesting. So as we look at that, what's going on with this war? It's going to be a long time of hardship. And I think that's what we will take away from this as Daniel brings out his next clarifications of the prophecy, that there's going to be a long time of hardship. Would it include war? Most likely, because what causes war? I mean, excuse me, what causes hardship? But tragedies and wars and pestilence and things like that. And of course, this certainly causes me to think of the current state of affairs that our world and country is in, and the rough times that seem to be happening in many places of tragedies and wars. And just in the news today, there was an encroachment on the Polish border by the Russian drones that were going in, and just a provocation And he's just so, what's going on here? Why is all of this happening? And that's where we look as we're studying this, saying, okay, are we seeing some of this? Is this part of Bible prophecy? Is this the way history has been since the time of Daniel? Certainly, those of you who are history buffs know that skirmishes and wars and dictators and those who try to usurp authority and take advantage of the less powerful have existed throughout time. And but yet we long for that not to occur. We long for peace. We long for rationale and compassion and civility to rule. And so all these things swirling around in our minds as we read these verses and try to apply them, and we look at our time and current state of affairs today. And so Daniel is looking for those same things. He's seeing that this hardship is going to be for its gadol a very long time. And it says that he understood the message and had understanding. So here we see two words that are very similar, and but they're repeated. And so those are always important in Hebrew. In English, the translators really disdain having to repeat two words together, and so they will try to find something, a very similar word, maybe a synonym, to use so that they don't have to use two words together. Well, Hebrew doesn't do that, or I believe the specific purpose that if you're reading it in Hebrew, you're going to see two words that are identical. And the idea is to stop and think. Why is this happening? Why are there two identical words? Is it meant to sometimes emphasize? Two words together will be to increase the intensity of it, to show that it's stronger, has stronger meaning. Um, and how would that fit with Daniel's understanding? Obviously, he struggled to understand this. And for him to write that I understood and I had an understanding of the vision, maybe it was a show of confidence. It was a show that, okay, God was giving him this message. The words being used here are the devar, which, as we had talked about in earlier lessons, are not frivolous words. They are words from the heart. So there's a very deep message, a very strong meaning being conveyed, and Daniel was grasping the understanding of it. And I think he was feeling something very positive within himself that he was saying, I get it, I get it, I get it. I understand this. What should have been very difficult to comprehend because it's in a very different dimension, a very different realm, he was able to understand it. And so, with all of those thoughts, we're going to close our lesson today. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of Hebrew, a little bit of deeper understanding, knowing that there is a cantillation or chanting or laning is the Yiddish word for this type of reading. And follow along as we go a little bit deeper next time. All right. God bless you and see you then. Bye bye.